Marcus had never been to the 14th floor before. He stepped out of the elevator and the first thing he noticed was the silence. Not the silence of an empty place, the silence of a place where people had learned to keep their voices low and their problems lower. The carpet up here was thick enough to swallow footsteps. The walls were clean and pale. Everything felt considered, arranged, like a room that had been designed to make whoever sat in it feel that things were under control. Marcus had a report in his hand that said things were not under control. He told the woman at the front desk he needed to speak with someone on the Infrastructure Council. She asked if he had an appointment. He said no. She asked what it was about. He said water. She looked at him the way people look at someone who has shown up to a dinner party without being invited, polite, careful, and not entirely sure what to do next. He sat down and waited. 40 minutes later a man named Caleb Rourke came through the door. Rourke was the kind of man who filled a room without trying to. Big through the shoulders, gray at the temples, with the calm steady face of someone who had spent decades hearing bad news and learning not to show it. He looked Marcus over once, not rudely, just a quick honest assessment of a man who wanted to know who he was dealing with, and then gestured toward a small side room off the main hallway, not the council chamber. A side room. Marcus noticed that too. He sat across from Rourke and laid the report on the table between them and started talking. He didn't dress it up and he didn't soften it. He told Rourke about the 11 events across 8 months. He told him about the corridor.
There are 3 windows in the next 30 days where the pressure inside the pipes will reach the point where the weakest joints could fail.
And he told him what that actually meant, not in engineering language, not in percentages, just plainly. That if those joints failed during one of those windows, the central district lost water. All of it. At once. And not for an hour. Rourke listened without moving. When Marcus finished, Rourke looked at the report for a long moment and then said something Marcus hadn't expected. He said he already knew the corridor was getting old. Marcus asked what that meant exactly. Rourke said it was on the replacement schedule. Had been for 2 years. Phase 1 assessment was planned for next year. Marcus looked at him and felt something settle in his chest, not anger exactly, something quieter than that. The particular feeling of realizing that the problem wasn't that nobody knew. It was that everybody had decided that knowing was enough for now. He asked Rourke if next year was going to work when the first high-risk window was 11 days away. Rourke picked up the report and read it again. This time slower. The full council met that same afternoon. 7 people around a long table and Marcus at the end of it feeling exactly as out of place as he was. These were not bad people. That was the thing he kept coming back to as he watched them. They were serious, experienced people who genuinely cared about the city they ran. But they had spent so long managing Zoa City's reputation as a place that worked, a city that had figured out the things other cities hadn't, that the idea of standing up and saying the water system was quietly falling apart felt almost physically painful to them. One of them said going public would cause panic. Another said the replacement schedule existed for a reason and bypassing it without full assessment was reckless. A third leaned forward and asked Marcus directly, was failure actually guaranteed? Was he certain? Marcus told him the truth. He said no, he wasn't certain. That no single window was a guarantee. But that each time one of those windows passed without failure, the pipes came out of it weaker than they went in. And that there were 3 windows. And that he was sitting in this room because he didn't want to find out which one was the last one the pipes could handle. Nobody said anything for a moment. That moment was the whole story really. 7 people sitting with a fact they couldn't argue with and couldn't comfortably act on and couldn't unknow. Marcus watched it move across the room like weather, slow, inevitable, changing the temperature of everything it touched. Rourke was the one who finally spoke.
We'll send a team underground. Small crew. No announcement. No press. Physical inspection of the corridor within the week. Eyes on the pipes directly, not just sensor data.
If the inspections come back confirming what Marcus found, emergency authorization will follow immediately.
Marcus took the elevator back down alone. He walked to his desk and sat down and looked at his screen where the pressure forecast was still open, the 3 windows sitting there in plain numbers, patient and indifferent the way that facts always are. 11 days to the first one. The inspection team had a week. He turned off his monitor and sat in the dark of his office for a little while. Not panicking. Not relieved. Just sitting with the particular exhaustion of a man who has spent his whole career paying attention and has finally found something he genuinely wished he hadn't. 4 days later the inspection team dropped into the tunnels beneath the central corridor with their equipment and their flashlights and their confidence that they knew roughly what they were going to find. They did not know what they were going to find. Because what was happening inside those pipe walls had nothing to do with what the sensors had been reporting.